Hello, Rambler fans, and welcome to a special edition of the Rambler Review. As this is Gary Hawkeye Vanna, joined by Mr. McBain, Lars Fredin, and we have a super special, extra intelligent, green and white bleeding Marc View from the Cadillac News. Hey, Marc, first of all, I want to give you a huge congratulations on that fantastic football season. And I don't know if you knew this or not, that U of M made it to the playoffs, but they did have one blemish on the record. You know who they lost to during the regular season?
I do believe, and of course, not according to the playoff committee, because results on the field don't matter. But they lost to Michigan State.
That's right. They did have that one loss to Michigan State, which had a great thing, and now they have a great head coach signed for a long time. So that'd be great to see what's coming out of East Lansing. But before we go any further, I want to talk about basketball. Girls basketball has already started, and they got a week under the belt, and then we have boys basketball getting ready to start this week. So before we go any further, Lars, I want you to tell me, what should we expect from this girls McBain Rambler team?
Well, this team has a couple girls on it that have been on varsity since their freshman year, one being Emma Skierbeck. This is her fourth year on varsity, and she's really going to have to almost score 15 to 20 points a game to help McBain get through this Highland run and some non-conference games. So she is up to the challenge. She scored 17 points her first game against Big Rapids, except McBain was down 10 points, came back to tie it, to force it in overtime, but McBain ended up losing by 6. I believe Big Rapids shot 42 free throws, and McBain shot a ton of three-pointers. Not all of them fell. So that was kind of the first game. We knew Big Rapids was going to be tough, and they were. McBain just has to learn not to foul inside, and some of those three-pointers are going to fall as the year goes on. Then let's just make the first week a busy week. Let's have a Friday night game against Manton, and Manton has one of probably the best individual players in the conference in Lauren Wilder, a sophomore. And Lauren had 28 points against Manton, or against McBain, and McBain ended up pulling out the win there. But let's have no rest for the weary. Let's have a Saturday game against Reed City, who Reed City kind of gave Cadillac a game. And it was, I think, within 10 points. I think it was 30-something to 20-something. I don't remember the score. Maybe Mark has it off the top of his head. But Cadillac is known for basketball. And Reed City gave them quite a challenge. Now, McBain took them on, and Reed City was up in the first quarter. McBain only scoring 5 points. And then in the second and third quarters, McBain put on a press and ended up taking the lead and ended up winning by 17 points. On that one, they were led by kind of a well-rounded effort. Emma Skierbeck had 9, Annalise Fredin had 9, Taylor Bentham had 8, and a few other scoring. So well-rounded scoring in there to get up into the 40s, I believe. So 3 games in the first week, even on a Saturday. And Marc View was down there checking out my wife's old stomping ground. So that was kind of a special day for my wife and her family, having her daughter play on the court that she grew up on. So that was kind of fun. So McBain's 2-1 right now. Most of those girls on the varsity, both seniors and juniors, have not lost many games in their whole career, even going back to 7th grade. So that was the first loss for some of those girls competing in middle school and high school basketball. So at least that one's off their back, and now they can just focus on playing good ball.
Well, that's a great start for them. Marc, I'm going to ask you this question. For the past couple of years, it's been Lake City, Manton, Lake City for the girls basketball. Last year, McBain went through the regular season undefeated, and then in Lake City didn't get to share the conference title since there was no title due to COVID, and they never got to meet. This year, is it still going to be like a 2 horse race here, or are we going to see a little bit more parity?
I still think it starts with McBain and Lake City with the girls in the Highland. I would probably pick McBain at this point. I think they're a deeper team. Certainly Lake City can counter Emma Skierbeck with Chloe Bisbal and Mackenzie Bisbal cousins. Chloe's a senior guard going to, I want to believe, Cornerstone next year. She's going somewhere like that, an NAIA school. but certainly those girls are just like McBain. They've got a lot of experience. They've been through the wars. They didn't see each other last year. That will obviously not be the case this year. Hopefully, knock on wood, they'll play twice during the regular season. And I believe they're back in the same district together. The interesting team out there is Everett for girls. They've kind of been that mid-tier team. They have a dynamic junior guard in Addie Gray who could shoot well, run the floor. There's Skylar Baumgartner returning, who were their two biggest players last year. Manton, obviously, Lauren Wild starts and finishes with Lauren Wilder. If they could get some other contributions, they could be a dangerous team. McBain Christian is a dangerous team. He's got pretty much everything back as well, and they've got a lot of size and athleticism. But it really is McBain and Lake City are the two strongest teams in the Highland.
And then you always have to be careful for those like trap games. I mean, Pine River always comes out and plays tough every single game.
Mm-hmm.
Holton Lake, they've been up and down, and they lost to Bisball, but they should still have some talent there. So it's going to be very interesting in the Highland Conference. Looking at the teams in the Highland Conference, can you see any of them having a deep postseason run? Now
McBain. It's interesting the way it shakes out this year. Certainly, they're going to have to get through Lake City to win the district. I would probably put those 2-1-2 because now that we're doing the seeding, they should play each other on that Friday night. The interesting thing this year with the regional is Glen Lake got kicked north. So Glen Lake is going to have to go through Calumet, which is not easy. Calumet beat Glen Lake last year in the quarterfinals, and I believe has a lot back. Calumet made a run in volleyball, as you saw, lost to McBain in 5 in the quarters. I'm assuming a lot of those girls play basketball as well. And it's always hard to get a lot of information from up there, especially that far up, because it's not like you're going to hop in the car and go scout them. You got to hope you can find it on Huddle or the NFHS network. Otherwise, you're taking sled dogs, especially to go that far north. But I could see McBain winning a regional title without, it's obviously very early and a lot happens. But, not really sure what's out there at this point. I just look and say, okay, Glen Lake was the big elephant in the room last year. And they've got pretty much everything back. They're loaded. But McBain wouldn't see them until the quarterfinals. And they've got probably a lot tougher road with Calumet there.
Now, there's 2 class or Division 4 teams in the Highland Conference also. Does Beale City or Northern Michigan Christian have a chance for a deep run in their division?
I got to look and see, and maybe if I can't make it super obvious, I'll pull the districts up right now while I'm talking. But Beale, NMC Beale seems like it was a closer game Friday night. Beale has been way down in girls basketball lately. Hasn't been very good. I'm going to see where NMC goes because sometimes my volleyball districts and basketball districts are not the same.
That's true.
Yeah. Hey, well, Mark's looking that up. That's some important points there. Beale City is kind of a volleyball softball school. And so their basketball team has been down, but their freshmen coming in are pretty talented. There's a guard, it's one of the coach's kids that's been playing a lot of AAU ball over at Maury Courts. And they have a pretty good freshman class with just a little bit more depth than what their upperclassmen have had. Now, I heard Holton Lake only had 6 kids per JV and varsity. A lot of them played the 5th quarter thing. Roger Hagerman had told me that. So Holton Lake's going to be really down this year if even if they have games. Let's hope that they can fill out their schedule. And the Roscommon really struggled last year, and there's really no help coming up from the JV teams. So those 3 teams, Beale City would probably be the best of the bottom tier. And then as far as the tournament run, I do think NMC could go a long way in their Division 4. Probably Mount Pleasant Sacred Heart, probably in the regionals, I would think.
What do you got, Mark?
Yeah, I found the districts. NMC is in with Big Rapids Crossroads, Marion, Mason County Eastern, Pentwater, and Walkerville. So, and Marion's going to be decent this year. They don't see the level of play that NMC does, and there's a lot to be said for NMC being in the Highland. It's not an easy conference. They played each other last year, two very similar teams in the district, and NMC handled them convincingly. So it'll be curious if that's a game at all this year. I know they play each other in the regular season some point in February, so that'll be a gauge. The boys don't, but the girls do play each other. So, but I would certainly say NMC would be the favorite there. And without knowing off the top of my head, it looks like Sacred Heart would probably be like a regional or even a quarterfinal.
Okay. Well, yeah. That will be some exciting basketball. We're just getting started with the girls. The guys, they actually start off this week. So that will wrap up our girls preview. We're going to bring on our men's basketball expert, Mr. Hoop Junkie, the gym rat of Twitter. He follows the AAU circuit so closely, he can actually tell you what AAU stands for. Jon Gilbert. Jon, thank you for joining our show.
Punctual as always.
Well, we're just starting the guys preview, and that's what we're going to ask you. But the first question is going to go to Lars Fredin because the McBain boys they're kind of rebuilding. They lost a lot when they lost 2-year starters, and they lost kind of a class of the ages. What do they expect to have for this year?
Yeah, so McBain had one of those classes that when COVID shut it down, they were expected to go maybe even to the quarterfinals and face the Iron Mountain team their junior year. They finally did have that happen in their senior year. And then they lost to that Forrester kid. So they had a great run.
That Forrester
they
kid.
Foster wonders.
Yes. And really, the game was pretty close. If they play him 10 times, I almost think they could beat him a majority of the times. But that kid was very good. So, yeah, it's definitely a rebuilding year. Bruce Copeman has retired from teaching, but he's back coaching, and he's only coaching the varsity team. So he has given up the JV team so he can really focus on that. And I believe he's 13 to 15 wins away from 500 wins. We'll have to wait to see how the games go, and I know he'll have them playing the best that they can play. It might be a challenge to get those 15 wins, so we'll see how McBain can do. I would have to think that NMC probably has two of the most talented kids on their roster, and then you always have battles with the other teams in the conference. So McBain is going to be in dogfights every night.
And I think that's the way they're going to have to play, is the grind it out type of McBain, slow it down and just pound you on defense type of thing, since they've lost the top 8 out of their rotation from last year to this year. So completely brand new lineup. Names to look out for will be Calvin McGillis, Evan Hooker, Dylan Schonert, Caleb Camphouse is come along nicely. Judah Leonard's going to be a kid to be kind of keeping an eye out on. And everyone's fan favorite, TK, Tyler Cucci, should be out there making some noise. Joe Winkle, he'll be something interesting. But
yep, Evan Haverkamp on that one. Yep.
Yes. All right. Now I'm going to throw it to the experts. That's going to be Jon and Mark. What do you expect to see out of the Highland Conference, and who is that battling for the top tier or the top of the conference this year? We'll start off with Jon, since you got to the party a little bit late.
I think it's going to be an unusual year in the Highland Conference, something we're not used to. As you guys have kind of said, it's been a conference that for the last few years has had, I shouldn't say the last few, going on 7-8 years, have had teams that are capable of going to the Breslin Center, the top 2 or 3 of the conference. And so I think across the board, I'm not trying to dog the conference, but the talent level is going to take a little bit of a step back. And a team that has struggled since they've been in the Highland Conference, kind of historically in the last 10 years, has been McBain Northern Michigan Christian. And as Lars alluded to, they probably have the top duo, the top two, the top Batman and Robin and Trevin Winkle and junior Blake DeZoo. And so I think that's going to be, NMC has been a team that kind of plays disciplined and grinds it out, and I think they'll have to get a little bit adjusted to being kind of the hunted and to being kind of having the top talent level. And they snuck up on a lot of people last year and had a successful season, a district title, got beaten a close one in the regionals by Frankfurt. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for them is how do they adjust to the expectations, adjust to programs gunning for them and keying in on Trevin Winkle and Blake DeZoo, and can the other guys step up a little? And but all in all, it's by no means, like you guys said, McBain was a generational class last year. And so, this is by no means NMC's conference to lose. There's a lot of really good teams in it. But just looking at the top two, you're probably looking at Northern Michigan Christian. And as you were saying with the girls, then that opens up a can of worms for, being the only Division IV team in the conference. Do they take their lumps in conference and then make a deep run in March? That could happen as well, but they've got Lake Leelanau, St. Mary staring at them. We're really good in the regionals. And so I think they're definitely the ones to watch. And then a lot of kind of bunched up really good teams below them. And we can get into them in however order you want to get into. But a lot of teams are going to be pretty similar in talent. And, I think a lot of it's going to be who gets hot, who kind of finds the secret sauce, who finds the chemistry to make things work. And I think it's going to be a fun league.
And Mark, what do you see setting up for the Highland Conference?
Yeah, I really agree with John. We've really kind of said it seems like a broken record. Well, it starts with McBain, and then we kind of go from there. You're never going to count out a Bruce Copeman team. This is my, I believe, 21st or 22nd basketball season around here. Leading coach in the area as far as getting kids to do what he needs them to do by February. It's a process every year. Some years I think he wants to bang his head against the wall, but at some point they'll get it done. The talent this year is NMC. One of the big questions last year was their toughness, mental and physical, and I think you really saw that at the regional game against Frankfurt. Frankfurt, aside from the Stefanski kid, probably not the most skilled team, but there's a lot to be said for playing football in the fall. And NMC got pushed around in that regional game, and they beat them during the regular season, but everybody will tell you the regular season doesn't mean a whole lot, especially with non-conference games. What are you going to do in March when it counts? And we'll see if NMC learned that lesson. It's a lot about strength when it comes to basketball. Can you hold your position? Can you take a beating and still get it done? NMC will be there. A lot of the tests will come from McBain because McBain is going to do that to them. Manton, similar this year. Ryan Hiller, he lost Caleb Moore. Was our all-area dream team captain last year.
Yeah.
But they're still going to be a solid team. He's got some pieces back, and they're going to be in the running. They're not real big this year, so they're going to kind of have to use some speed and athleticism to their advantage. Lake City's kind of a question mark. They've kind of been up and down. Beale City, I'm not really sure. Obviously, they had the phenomenal run in football, so they've got athletes, and they always have athletes. The question is, what's the skill level basketball-wise? Past that, Roscommon was interesting last year. Roscommon could shoot the ball, and any team that gets hot can beat anybody. I especially think this year because, like you said, there is a lot of parity this year. Pine River plays hard defensively. Don't count them out. Not sure on Houghton Lake. They've been down a little bit. Everett has got some athletes. So it really is. It's an interesting year for the Highland, and John said it well. There's not a team that you can look at and say, man, they're going to be good. said so many times between McBain and Matt, and NMC has that potential this year, but they're that D4 team in a largely D3 league, which hopefully that benefits them come March.
Yeah, that should be a great thing. Besides NMC, do you see any other Highland team being able to actually put a deep run, a regional finals, or even beyond the regionals this season?
You know, it's interesting because it's changed around a little bit, and Traverse City St. Francis is going to be very good.
Yeah.
You know, once they get their legs under them from football, they lost in the state semifinals in football. The team that some people are talking about, it'll be interesting, is Benzie Central. Drops to Division III this year, and they have one very good player. John would know his name. I saw him quite a bit over the summer. Cadillac has a big 3-day shootout every year at the end of June. Benzie Central is going to be a force, and I'm assuming that Benzie and St. Francis are in the same district with each other.
Benzie and St. Francis are in the same district, yeah.
Okay, so you know, whoever wins the McBain, Manton, Lake City conglomerate is going to have to deal with that. Yeah, the Highland Conference Invitational at the district level. It's the second Highland Conference trophy every year. It just looks like the shape of Michigan with the district. But you know, aside from NMC, I think D3 this year, I think is going to be a little bit tougher road for our teams. And then that's not sure what's going to come out of the Upper Peninsula because Iron Mountain, I believe, is finally done. So their cupboard looks pretty bare.
Well, the tag team on that, I heard you talking about having to get the sled dogs to scout and stuff. Another team that slid down to seed that I think is flying under the radar a little is Menominee. And I saw some of their athletes playing in some AU events this summer. And I think if anybody's coming out of the UP, I'd put my money on Menominee. But, you know, it's kind of that, you know, there are definitely more talented, deeper teams north of us. But, you know, are they going to kind of, you know, cancel each other out, you know, because teams from mid-northern Michigan, if you want to call that, you know, we only really have to beat them one time. You know, Glen Lake, St. Francis, Charlevoix, Benzie Central, a lot of these teams are going to cancel each other out. I think Charlevoix has to go and play with the UP teams. But it's gonna be real interesting because I do believe Glen Lake, St. Francis, and Benzie Central are all in the same district. So, you know, you really don't have to beat one of those teams. And so it'll be interesting to see.
All right. Well, real quick, we thank you for the wrap up on the Highland Conference. I just want a little shout out. Mark, give me a quick preview of the Cadillac girls. And John, you're giving me a quick preview of what we should expect out of the Cadillac boys this year. All right. We'll start off with Mark.
Okay. It's going to be an interesting year for Cadillac's girls. They're going to have to rely on defense and win low scoring games. They've graduated a lot of talent the last couple of years. There's no more Molly Anderson or McKenna Bryant or Livy Meyer or Maddie Drabeck. They're going to have to keep teams to under 40 to 45 points a game. You know, there is some talent there and there's some young talent kind of hanging around, but it's going to be a little different year than what we've seen in the last couple of years from Cadillac. I think, you know, a 5 to 10 win season could be a lot for them this year.
All right. And John, the boys, what should we look at for the Cadillac boys? Make it quick.
Cadillac boys, I'll try and be quick. Coach Benzenberg might not be happy with me for saying this, but in terms of college level talent, Cadillac might be probably the most deepest team in terms of talent in what you would consider the Northern Michigan region, if you count Ludington, if you count a few of those other schools. And, you know, it starts with, you know, a defensive force, one of the longest players that you're going to see in the Northern Michigan level, 6'9", Cole Genema. And I think the key for them is to just kind of get the pieces to work around them. And Cole Genema has been playing varsity for 3 years, and you know what you're going to get from Cole Genema. So I think for Cadillac going forward, it's, you know, what are they going to get from the young pieces? And some of those young pieces are guards like Jaden Montag, forward Charlie Howell, There's some other good players that I think I'm missing. They've got a really good 9th grade class coming up. What are they going to do with them? Is there room for them in the deep rotation? I think those are going to be the questions. How do the pieces fit together, and how successful can they be? Because the Big North Conference is pretty good. Petoskey's going to be good, even though they've changed coaches. Central, how many of the football players actually play, and how many go down to Notre Dame to take their scholarship? The Big North's going to be up for grabs, but then they're kind of in the same boat as at MC at the bigger level. You know, they play against a lot of Class A schools, might take a few lumps in the regular season, and then get to slide down and play, you know, tournament ball in Class B. So I think that's going to be the key for them is how quickly can they gel? How quickly can the young players know their roles, know where they want to be? And like we've said, you know, more than once, can we be peaking? Can a team, any team, be peaking come March? And I think that's going to be the key for Cadillac.
All right, so let me wrap up the boys and girls preview. McBain, Public, and NMC both look really strong. They both look for deep runs in their division. Any team that's coached by Bruce Copeman is always going to be in the hunt. But Cadillac, the boys, are really also another area team that could have a deep run also. So we're going to keep an eye on both of those. Big matchups. McBain will be playing Cadillac. Doubleheader on one night. They'll be playing alternate gyms. So the girls will be playing here in McBain the same night the boys are playing at Cadillac. Those should be 2 fun games. Thank you for joining us for the Rambler View. This is Gary Hawkeye Vanna, Marc View, Mr. McBain, Lars Fredin, and right below me, Jon Gilbert, the guru of all basketball. Thank you for joining us. Feel the wheel.